Hello, hello. Welcome to What's Working Now. I am your host, Katie Richardson. Today, I have a really amazing guest. Rick Jordan is the founder and CEO of Reach Out Technology, the first publicly held managed services provider. He's also the podcast host of All In with Rick Jordan. He's a best-selling author of Situational Ethics and a frequent expert guest nationwide on ABC, NBC, CBS, Fox, Bloomberg, Cheddar News, and Ticker News. Rick, welcome to the show.
Hey, what's shaking, Katie? It's good to be here. Thanks for
Well,
having me.
I'm excited to dive into your story and to hear more how you're doing the incredible things that you're doing in the world. And to really understand your story, tell us the story of an experience that has really formed and shaped who you are today.
Yeah, I always go back to when I was 16 years old when my dad passed away. And he was 46 years old. That's it. So, I mean, only 4 years beyond where I'm at right now, 42. And I think I'm really freaking young, especially with what I'm doing and how I keep up with people. I have 21-year-olds that are like, oh my God, how do you have so much energy? Yeah, and so I can imagine him being this age that I'm at right now and just trying to relate that back. But that really shaped my outlook on things because my younger brother and sister are 5 and 6 years younger than me. And when I was 16, they were just 10 and 11. That's it. And my mom was working full time. And even before that, though, this really just solidified just sort of the leadership role that I was meant to have in life and what I do, and really just kind of forging new paths and just recognizing that when you get hit with something like that so young, of course, there's negative traumas that can happen out of that, which are things that I've made so much intention and effort to put in a lot of self-work in, especially over the last 5 years. However, there's also a lot of positive things that can come from something like that too. You get, people will say that you grow up too fast if this hits you that young. And I'm like, well, I don't know, because maybe this was just the way things were supposed to be. And now recognizing after the self-work that my dad really set up a good foundation for who I ended up becoming as a man.
Wow. I mean, when I look at you, that's one of the words that really stands out to me is you obviously are a very powerful leader, but you do it in an incredible way, and you step up and you speak up. And so to hear that this tragic experience has been a big part of that, and that you were able to shape that identity at such a young age, that's really, really fascinating. You mentioned that you are constantly working on yourself, and especially in the last 5 years, I'm really curious, what are some of the things that you have been intentionally working on recently?
Yeah, it's recognizing a lot of those things. And over the last 5 years, I've dealt with a lot of things from sort of my 20s and early 30s. When you're that young, I mean, I remember back, if we talk about leadership, I remember back in like 6th grade, right? I was in, I think it was called, what was it called? Sunday school in church. That was it. And I don't know why it was called that. I still don't know. It's the stupidest name in the world. Sunday school, whatever. And it wasn't a Catholic, it was a Protestant church, a Pentecostal, very, very out of the box for that time. Cause you're talking, that was like the late 80s or the early 90s. And I mean, we even had like drum sets in church, right? Cause I played them, my dad was the worship leader. So I got to see him in leadership roles really, really young. And it's cool because my kids get to see me in the same light now. When I was in Sunday school, I remember just asking, it's like, hey, can I teach some Sunday? And I'm like, okay. I still remember to this day that the thing that I taught about was Noah's Ark. Yeah, and I don't know why. I mean, most of it was just like reading from, and everybody, whether you have faith or not, everybody knows the story about Noah's Ark, right? But the thing that captured me was the details, like how massive this freaking boat was, how many cubits wide, cubits tall, and how much was actually able to be fit inside of there. So I went into all these details about these things, which I thought were really the part of the story that was missed. I'm like the massive undertaking that this was, and just the incredible leadership and also the incredible humility that Noah had. And Noah wasn't perfect. So I think back to these time periods when that happened, and it's like that alone started this foundation. But then when I got into my 20s and 30s, this is back to the self-work that you're talking about. I started to get a little jaded because I grew up in this church world, and I saw a lot of pastors that weren't necessarily the types of leaders that my dad was.
Okay.
And, you know, it really kind of shaped this negative seed that was inside of me, you know, to the point where it's like, I never want to do that again. I ended up getting ordained, you know, because I planted 3 churches with 3 different pastors, and I was always the number 2. And there, throughout this whole process, what I've learned now in the last 5 years was really compassion. Because during that time period, and think about this, because when you go to a church, right, I don't care what faith you are, but if you have a religious leader of some sort, you almost expect that person to be perfect, right? To be of a higher standard. There's a higher threshold. And the
Yeah.
thing that is always forgotten is that that person is still a freaking human being.
Hmm.
So starting to have that compassion for others in the last 5 years, and I've always been a compassionate person. I've had my dad to lead me in that way and show me what that means. But really embracing that, having compassion for others allowed me to have compassion for myself.
Mm.
And I mean, because there's mistakes that I've made, of course, over the last 20, 30 years, whatever. And understanding that those are just a moment in time and we can take the learnings and move forward with them. That's true compassion for yourself, but you can only have that for yourself when you start to have that for others.
I think this is such an important message for CEOs because, you know, we are motivated, we're very driven, and because of that, we can be really, really self-critical. So to hear how you discovered the power of compassion, and by extending it to others, you're extending it also to yourself. I think that's
Yeah.
an important message.
Can I speak to CEOs real quick around the topic of compassion?
Absolutely.
'Cause there was a business that I acquired a 50% stake in a few years ago. I'm no longer in this business. I exited. And with my partner there, he and I had formed a good relationship over 10 years, and it was just the right time. It was a personal protection and high value asset protection business. I'm talking guns, guards, snipers on roofs, protecting diamonds, protecting celebrities, you know,
Wow.
just hardcore stuff, you know, like I was on Caitlyn Jenner at one time myself, you know, or Rahm Emanuel, you know, the former press or the Secretary of Communication for the Obama administration became mayor of Chicago. I was on him directly. So the large individuals, you know, we would do work for
Mhm.
like Beyonce and all that, huge celebrities. And there was a moment in time to where with this compassion, I was trying to help out as many people as I could, because this work is like on demand. You know, the events come up. We would pay at the time, this was before the minimum wage increase, you know, and most nationwide firms were paying their employees like $9 or $10 an hour to do this kind of work, you know,
Mhm.
for unarmed
Wow.
stuff, you know, no
Wow.
sidearm. We would pay 15, you know, just because it was a compassion driven business. And we also were a boutique shop and provided true protection services rather than security. You know, so there's a
Okay.
difference between those two things. You know, security is kind of making sure like something doesn't get stolen, but true protection is making sure something doesn't happen to a person or a thing, you know, throwing
Wow.
yourself in the way of things. It's a different mindset. So I went to hire a friend of mine, right? And I was out of town. So I told my partner, I'm like, this guy's coming in, you know, we'll just stick him on some jobs, some events. He's having a rough time financially, no problem. And this is a dude that I had known for, geez, he was actually a leader in the youth group in that same church I was talking to you about when I was a kid. And I get this call while I'm away from my partner saying, dude, we can't hire this guy. I'm like, what? I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm like, this is like simple work. We'll stick him on some low level events. He'll get some cash so he can make his ends meet. It's sort of like a bridge before he finds some more work to do. It's like, no, you don't understand. I'm like, he just went on and on about how he
Hmm.
taught you everything that you know. And in this
Wow.
moment, I mean, there was more than what he said there. And he goes, I've realized something between you and me. He goes, we're compassionate, but we like to help strays. And I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, that hit me right then and there, you know. So when it comes to CEOs, because I had 130 people, 130 employees in this company. And when it
Mhm.
comes to CEOs, making those decisions to be like, you can't do that, that's where it comes back to having compassion for yourself, or when you need to fire somebody. Because I've got patience, like almost unending patience with people, with situations, until there's like this steep drop off point and it's like done for me. You know, it gets to a
Mhm.
point and there's just it's not like I get angry or anything like that. It's just, it's gone, you know, in an instant. And it's a very steep drop off. And starting to learn myself in the self-worth and self-worth and self-work is, it's good to have compassion for people, but not when it's at the expense of yourself.
Oh man.
And that's actually having compassion for yourself when you're not
Yeah.
allowing it to be at the expense of yourself. So if you need to fire somebody, fire them. If you need to not hire somebody who's a friend of yours because you're trying to help them out, like me, don't hire them, because that's having compassion for yourself, and you're ending some of the turmoil because you're responsible for everybody else that works for you too. In
Oh
years
man.
past, I've let that go too far. I've kept people
Yeah.
on too long, and it's affected other people and me. I wasn't having compassion for myself because I was actually just being like, oh, I should have compassion. I should have patience, and give this person another chance. Let's let it ride out a little bit longer. But that was very incompassionate to myself by allowing myself to continue to go through those struggles for me. You got to be the best for you before you can be the best for other people.
Love this perspective shift. And I've had to remind clients before, you're not a charity. Like this needs to be a profitable business. You can't just be giving away. And I love this connection between when you are doing those kinds of things, are you being compassionate towards yourself and the needs of yourself and your team and your business? And what a beautiful example. Rick, something that I've noticed about you is you play big and you self-describe all in. Where does that drive and passion come from? And what does all in look like for you?
My God, all in is being consistent every day with showing up the best that you possibly can. And it's a daily thing. And this is I mean, some of this can get a little cliche, but I'm going to keep it as far away from that as possible,
Okay.
because the consistency about your intention is really what's important. Yeah, because your actions will fail. Even if you're as all in as I am, yeah, I play big. I don't know the meaning of the word small. If somebody comes up to me with an idea, I'm like, cool, how can we make it like 100 freaking times bigger than this? I'm like, I love
Yeah.
your idea. What if your idea was applied to all these other areas too? And then it
Mm.
freaks most people out when I do those kinds of things, but I keep pushing, and then it's like, well, wait, what if we fail at that? I'm like, so what? We fail at it, we'll take some learnings and then we'll keep moving forward. And failure to me is really more of like a temporary setback rather than a permanent defeat.
Hmm.
Yeah, and that's a concept that I picked up out of a book. I mean, one of my favorite books recently is Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon Hill. I think everybody
Yes.
should read this. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, it's incredible. Uh,
Yeah.
Being all in for me is having the intentions every single day and taking actions based off of those intentions, because your intentions can waver if you allow them to, but intentions are a choice. Your actions and showing up as people, I mean, if it's like working out, I'll take something simple, right? I work out about 4 to 5 times a week, but the only reason I'm able to do that is because I have the intention of that. I show up every single day. Even the days that I don't want to, I still have the intention of working out. And it's the intention that pushes me through to those things, to actually create those actions and take massive action. There's days to where my intention, if it's not there, those are the days to where I'll be like, yeah, I don't need to today. Yeah, and this was hard for me because I had some surgery. If I take this last year, I used to weigh a lot, like 280,
Really?
290 pounds. Yeah.
Wow.
The years ago, I dropped a bunch of weight. Then I put a lot of muscle on over the last couple of years. And because of that, I decided to have an elective surgery of a tummy tuck, but even more so, it was muscle repair in my abs
Yeah.
because I was so big for so long. There's a condition, I can't remember the name of it, but your abs split. It's almost like a pregnant woman.
Diastasis recti. I'm
There it
I'm
is.
a
That's
mom. I
it.
know what that is.
There it is. Yeah, it's the fascia, right? That
Yeah.
it's supposed to be elastic, or have this elasticity to it. And when you're pregnant for 9 months, cool, it goes back for the most
Mm.
part, with the
Mm.
pregnant woman. However, for a dude that was very big for like 15 years, that stuff kind of gets stuck there, and it
Yeah.
can give you back problems when you're older. I didn't have them, but they told me about it. Mine was like 3 inches apart. I'm like, oh God, we need to do something about this. And then I get the side benefit of having that extra skin that I had taken off, to where it's just like amazing. I didn't drop any pant sizes, which was interesting. There's just nothing extra
Wow.
that's hanging there. Yeah. So I was
Yeah.
already still pretty fit. It was just, I look better now without a shirt on. I like that.
Yeah.
When I did that, getting back into my workout routine, because it was only, I mean, no joke, I killed myself almost, not literally, but to the point to where there was like extra blood coming out because I just had the surgery. That same day, I was up and like cooking dinner
Oh my
is the
word.
surgery. And the next morning I was like cooking pancakes for my kids. I was out, I took 2 30-minute walks, like high paced walks the very next day after the surgery. I'm like, cool, I'm recovering quickly and all this stuff. But then they started like seeing that, like, you gotta like take it easy a little bit, because they have drains in, right? I
Hmm.
had to have drains in a little bit longer than what I should have, because I'm like, I've got intention to recover quickly. I was the only one they ever saw. I remember this part because they wheel you out in a wheelchair when the surgery is done, right? And I
Okay.
just stood myself up and got right into the car. Like, what? The nurse was like, okay, I've never seen anybody do that before. Like, whatever, I got
Wow.
this. Yeah, but that's the intention that carried over from all the discipline and consistency that I had from being all in with my fitness in prior
Hmm.
years, prior
Hmm.
leading up until this very day. But then after you start recognizing, you know what, starting to feel a little pain there, and maybe I should take it a little bit easier, because I want this
Right.
to heal the right way. So then my intention shifted to like, you know what, let's make sure that I heal the right way. However, getting out of that rhythm for such a long period of time, because it was like 7 weeks, getting
Wow.
back to it, it's like, you know what? And I got this weird thing when I come out of general anesthesia, I crave sugar. Oh my gosh. So it's like I'm eating cookies and brownies and all this stuff. Like, and I just can't get enough sugar when I come out. Apparently it's a thing. I read about it. I guess it's a
Oh,
thing.
wow.
Yeah, I
Okay.
didn't really know it until a surgery I had a few years ago. But it's this thing. I'm one of these people that just craves sugar for like weeks, for like 3 weeks,
Okay.
and you got to cut that, right? You got to stop that stuff. So after that, I'm like, I can keep going, whatever, what, maybe I'll just take an extra week just so, because then the thoughts keep in, and it's like my intention starts to waver. My
Wow.
intention was originally to get back into things after 6 or 7 weeks. Whenever
Hmm.
I was released to start doing these things, I would get right back to where I was. But then my intention started to waver, because you start to see things in your surroundings, in your environment. Like, I was taking it too hard on myself right away, not allowing my body to rest. And then I see more blood coming out of that drain. The drain was taken out too late. So I'm thinking, now I get to the point I let these thoughts come in that were not true. It's like, well, maybe I should just wait another week. Oh, how about another week after that? Maybe one more week, So my intention started to waver in this.
Hmm.
And I started realizing, it's like, wait, this is all just in my head at this point. It's been 9 weeks. There's no reason why I can't just, walk outside and pick up, which is what I would do. I mean, pick up 250 or 5 gallon water jugs, which weigh about 50 pounds, right? And maybe even work with those, some rows or something like that. And I mean, I'm built, but I'm not like this muscle man, it's, but it's what I would do. So I'm like, there's no reason why I can't do this stuff. And then you start to hit yourself in the head and recognize my intention fell off the map for a bit. And as soon as your intention's back there, your actions start to line up. That's being all in, is your intentions every single day.
Rick, I love that you've spent so much time talking about intention. I think it's such a critical element to relationships and life and business, and it doesn't get talked about very much. What are things that you're doing to define that intention? I'm sure it's not complicated, but I would love for you to share with us what you do to really set that intention.
Yeah, you start recognizing what's important in your life. And if you can list those things out, I mean, and don't make it huge, because it's really, if you think about like the top three things in your life, it's probably just that. It's like the top three things, and everything else kind of falls underneath as a hierarchy. Oh, if your
Hmm.
intention is to affect those every single day, because it's like family, people that work for me, the rest of the world. Now, mine, you say I go big, right? Because I mean, look at that last one, the rest of the world, right? How can I put intention every single day into the rest of the world? But that's something that I do. I figure out ways to do that. If it's, guesting on an awesome podcast, like what's working now, I'm here, because this will impact people in the rest of the world. There's always something in my day to do that. There's always something in my day to connect with family. There's always something in my day to connect with people that are here. And now even putting intention into my schedule too, because I'm starting to, before I would just used to be all over the place because I'm moving, 100 miles a second with a
Sure.
company that just went public, acquisitions, building, continuing to build a personal brand, getting calls from Bloomberg while I'm filming a TV show that, so, and having to say no to one of them. just because it would be a double book. There's a lot that I've got going, but taking a look even now, this is my latest thing, is putting intention into my weekly calendar. And it's not complex. I'm just taking, it's like, you know what, Mondays are my time to connect with my internal team during the day. Now I'm just talking about work, one-on-ones. I do CEO talks every Monday morning, which is out, it's broadcast out to the entire company. And as we acquire more, it connects them back to culture, which is me. They get everything straight from my mouth, and it's just a way to motivate and inspire. I really don't talk about too much company business during those times, but there's always Q&A. It's just a way to keep them motivated and inspired for the week, to go through the week, because that's what I love doing. See, that's the middle one, those top three that I was talking about, right? The people that work for me. But then it's Tuesday through Thursday afternoons. I've now set aside, this is just in the past 3 weeks, and it's working really well, for times to have external meetings.
Okay.
Right, with people outside the organization. And then Fridays are just kind of left there for creative time, and for dreaming time, and maybe doing some things that I want to do. If it's the afternoon and I go out shooting or something like that, or if it's just, I don't know, if just drive around, I can't think of things, take my Aston out for a spin, whatever it is, and just think for a while. And then those Tuesday through Thursday mornings, I have specific time set aside now for connection time. And when I say connection, it's actually time to just reach to people in my network. That's it. I mean, look at when we're talking. This is a connection time for me, right? It's building network, it's supporting other people. And look at the time when we're talking. It's 9 a.m. on what's today, Wednesday? Wednesday morning.
Yeah,
yes.
Wednesday.
Yes, exactly. Having that time dedicated just to pick up the phone for people, like on the TV show I was on last week, 2 Minute Drill with David Meltzer. I met some awesome people, and we're going to stay in touch. That takes intention to do that.
Yeah.
This time setting aside, like Michael Chandler, who's a UFC fighter, Austin Eckler from the Los Angeles Chargers. These are people that were judges on this show with me. It's like we exchanged information, like we're going to do some things. We don't know what yet, but we vibe. And now it's up to, think about it. They might not connect back with me, but I'm going to make intention to connect back with them.
So good. When I was looking and researching you, I definitely saw all of the many things that you have going on. As you mentioned, you just went public, you've got big teams, you've got documentaries. And my question in my mind before I had met you was like, how present is this guy? And I'm like 20 minutes into this interview, you're super present. And I can imagine what you just described for us, your day, your calendar, how you have made a lot of those decisions, when you're going to be networking, when you're going to be present with your family, when you're going to be out spinning around in your Aston Martin. Like, you've made those decisions ahead of time. And I can imagine that relieves a lot of the worry and stress and fear. Are there other things that allow you to navigate the landscape of playing so big? What are some of the other things that keep you grounded?
Yeah, I listen a lot to podcasts, and I do. And there's a lot of the books that I read too. I say read, but I don't really read. They're all audiobooks.
Yeah.
And when it comes to my time, obviously there's not a lot when you factor in all these things. So some of the things I try to double up on, like my workouts for me, it does so much more for me than just getting my body right and in the right place. Because during that time, that's when I'll listen to audiobooks. It's for me, and I know not every individual is this way, because in order for comprehension for a lot, they have to physically pick up a book. For me, I don't know, it's because I'm very much an oral communicator in a lot of things that I do, that I actually receive that well in those specific ways. So audiobooks work amazing for me, and I'll listen, like Outwitting the Devil I just talked to you about, right?
Love it.
The latest book that I'm because it just came on audiobook, was Ed Milet's The Power of One More. That's the next one that I'm going to be diving into. And it's all on audio. And I love it when the authors actually read it themselves, because they, obviously that can't be Napoleon Hill because he died a long time ago, but someone like Ed Milet, or even Jordan Belfort, right? Like The Way of the Wolf, which is an awesome sales book, by the way. You hear it in their own voice, and they put their own inflections into this, and you're just able to capture the emotion. And it's the emotion that can start to make those shifts in you. Or even if it's a Napoleon Hill book read by some audible voiceover person somewhere,
Mhm.
Still the words that are there are, you hear them and they soak into me. And why do you go to events, right? I mean, entrepreneurs go to events all the time. They're not sitting there and reading a packet word for what the speaker is. So I would think there's a lot more, at least in our crazy culture that we have as entrepreneurs, that are very auditory learners. You know, they
Mhm.
might need some visuals to go with it, but the visuals maybe could come after. So I double up on that time. And if there's days I won't listen to audiobooks. I won't do that because there's times where it's like, I just need to, while I'm doing this, it's a good time to meditate also. So I'll just put some
Mm.
music on and I'll just think through a lot of things, especially if it's a day that came after like a struggle or something, like if an acquisition started to go south, you know, because this stuff
Mhm.
happened, negotiations go crazy, or if I'm having you know, a tough time with an employee, that time I'll spend thinking about these things so that I
Yeah.
don't make I mean, when I work out for an hour, you know, because I'm lifting. I got the warm up beforehand, the stretching time. It's an hour long. It's a lot of time to think, or a lot of
Mhm.
time to consume and let things soak into you.
You mentioned that recently your company went public. And as somebody who has just recently gone through that process, what are some things that you wish you had known previously?
I laugh on this one because it's not all like glitter and, you know, champagne.
I'm sure,
It's
right?
even now because I remember the day I found out. I was actually with Ed Milet on the day that I found out. I was at an Arte Syndicate event on Miami Beach at this party that we were having, and I received this call from my securities team. Said, yeah, the SEC just called. And I love telling the story because it's always like, wait, the SEC makes phone calls? I mean, you get a file of
Right.
it. I'm thinking like, oh shit. You know, I don't know if I can say that, but whatever. That was my response. It's like, what can I do here?
Yeah.
You know, because it's like, what's happening? Is this something to where they're like legal problems or whatever? I'm like, oh Lord, they made a phone call. This must be bad. And he's like, they're good. They just called to tell us that we're good. We're public. I'm like, what?
Whoa.
Yeah. So I'm like, the conversation lasted maybe like 47 seconds. That's it. I'm like, all
Wow.
right, thanks, Brian. Hang up the phone and I walk back. I turn to Ed and I'm like, dude, I'm public. Like, what do you mean? I'm like, I just got a call.
I just
My
got a
company just
call.
went public. He's like, what? He's like, this is how this happens. I'm like, I guess. I don't know. Never took a company public before. And then he starts like, I mean, it took a moment, but then his eyes start tearing up. And I just met him like a day prior, had lunch with him, right? And he's genuinely happy for me in this moment. It's just incredible because his compassion is like, that's amazing. You know, took some photos together.
Wow.
And then I like separated myself after that and went just sat on the beach by myself. I'm like, what does this even mean?
Mm.
Because I'm not sure at this point. It took 2.5 years throughout the entire process and a little over $1 million in expenses to get to
Wow.
this point.
Yeah.
Yeah, and as a business making, you know, because at that time I think we're doing maybe 4 million a year in revenue when we started that process, you know, so it's not a humongous business at the time, you know, but this was like the next step because going public really for all the CEOs and entrepreneurs listening, it's really a financing event.
Yeah.
It's really all it
That's
is.
true.
You know,
Yeah.
there's all this, you know, pomp and circumstance around it, and we're public but not listed. So we're listing on NASDAQ, intending to in about 3 years or so. This is
Okay.
where we have public shares out there through Regulation A. It's a great opportunity for a lot of young entrepreneurs to have this financing event. But even when we list on NASDAQ, you know, I'll be ringing the bell. I've got a dude on
Mhm.
my board, Darren Jacklin, who's on the board of EXP Realty. He's rung it 5 times now. That company's worth like 4 billion now. They were worth 8 billion at the beginning of the year, but you know, the market crash. I mean, 4 billion is still a lot. You know, I've got
Yeah.
these amazing mentors around me, but still, even in that moment, I can kind of imagine myself actually feeling like I did on the beach. It's like, what does this really mean right now? This is cool because I mean, and everybody says congratulations. And I take it because I know they're genuine in that, and they think that's what they're supposed to do. That it's this crazy awesome thing, which it really is a crazy awesome thing if you let it sink in, because it's like a milestone of the work that you've already put in.
Yeah.
And now at this point, it's like I had to sit there because I shouldn't say I don't, because I should say that I didn't. I used to not take moments for these things. I would just blow
To
by.
celebrate.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just blow by these things. So
Yep.
let it sink in. Like this is actually a reflection of all the work that's been put in for the last 2.5 years. Then it became, let's share this moment with family, with everybody that works for me, because everybody put in time for this. I mean, they had to deal with my crazy self and demands from me, trying to push this thing through. There's high moments, there's low moments throughout these 2.5 years, and now we're in the middle of our offering right now, which is at reachoutit.com/invest. You can see it. And this is I'm not saying go there and invest, but I can just saying for all the entrepreneurs, you can go and see what something like this looks like. Yeah,
Mhm.
because right on the page there, because Kevin Harrington, the original shark from Shark Tank, is on my board. Also,
Love it.
he's an investor in the company. He's a mentor of mine now. He's got a great
Mhm.
book, Mentor to Millions. I'll plug that while I'm on here. Freaking awesome book. He's a mentor of mine, has been and become a friend now for the last 3 years. You can see all the SEC filings that are on that page. Everything that's had to go into this is right there on
Wow.
that one single page. And that's like 2.5 years worth of work. And now we're raising, which is a small raise for a Reg A. It's a $6 million raise, but it's just a financing event. And for us in my industry, because as you mentioned in my bio, we're the first and only publicly held pure managed service provider, and nobody else in this industry has done it. There's been those that have acquired somebody, public companies that have acquired somebody like me, but they're like copier companies. They don't provide the cybersecurity services. We are the first and only as of today, as of July, whatever today is, see, 20th. There you go. As of
Yeah.
July 20th, we're the first and only. Going through this process, though, I can't wait to see what the next couple of years bring, because it took a moment, and now I'm learning to stop pushing so hard on some of these things and let things maybe follow their own pace. It doesn't mean to give up on your intentions or slow things down intentionally. It's
Mhm.
meaning make sure you go through the process the right way. It doesn't mean push things or not push things, to make them happen, because you still have to take massive action behind all these things. But trying to force something faster
Yes.
than what it should be is the difference. There's no more forcing for me, because
Yeah.
forcing sucks. Forcing causes stress. Forcing stresses out the people around you. So if it takes 2.5 years, I mean, this was through a pandemic. Usually this process takes 6 months. That's it for a Regulation A plus offering. But because of the pandemic and all these other things and different strategies, it took 2.5 years, and it was the right timing for us, because now when our offering launched, the market already crashed. We're a safer investment in the market right now than just the free trading listed stocks. And this wouldn't have been the case a year ago, wouldn't have been the case a year and a half ago, because we're at the beginning of this, and now we're acquiring companies. Every acquisition, that's what the capital is used for. Every acquisition
Okay.
increases the book value of the stock.
So good.
It's like simple math. So if it's $1 a share right now, when we acquire $5 million, which we're intending on closing on this company in the Northeast region in August, it like
Okay.
increases it book value like around 40 cents. So that's 40%. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just a simple plan. And the timing on this stuff, even that too, because that one's been in negotiations since December, and we
Okay.
were trying to push for June, then July and everything, but it's taken its own timing again. And when all these things happen to where it's like, you know what, I'm going to take my hands off the wheel
Yeah.
for a second, just
Yeah.
let this thing coast and go at its own pace that it's supposed to. Now I have a lot less stress and I feel more relaxed.
It's such a fine balance because we can't ignore it. And at the same time, to your point, you cannot force it. Cannot force it. I'm so curious about your business, cybersecurity business, and your area of expertise specifically. What I don't even know what question to ask you around this. Like, what are things that CEOs and entrepreneurs, just like basic stuff that we need to be aware of to keep
Yeah.
ourselves safe and protected online?
Yeah, there's some really basic things that anybody should have, and any business, I mean, because consumers, it sucks. Consumers are kind of screwed right now, like everyday people on their home computers, because there's not a
Hmm.
lot out there that actually provides real protection. In the business realm, we're starting to see now, even in small businesses, where insurance companies, because you have to have cyber liability now, it's a separate policy, right?
Wow.
Especially if you're dealing with any kind of data or anything, because if you get hit with ransomware, You have loss of revenue. You need that bridge there, which insurance can cover. Depending on what data was locked up, you might be providing services to clients and now they have loss of revenue because you can't provide those services because you got hit. And this
Hmm.
isn't big business. I mean, you could be a small business of 3 people. I think our
Hmm.
smallest client is 3 people. And we've got clients up to, I think it's 1,200 or something like that employees, but the smallest is 3. And they're an electrical contractor that provides electrical services to and consulting and designs and everything to these big corporations. And if something happens with them to where they can't deliver their services, now they're holding up these corporations, these large corporations. It's a big financial risk, let alone a reputation risk. That's the thing that most don't weigh, is the
Okay.
reputation damage when it comes to something like this. Because if you get breached, now you have to start telling people about this because it's like it's their data, especially if there was a financial transaction involved. Like there was a new client we just brought on board 45 days ago that had a $1.2 million breach. They only have 19 people working in the company. That's it. But it's because it was a wire transfer from a client that got intercepted. I can't remember all the details, but I'm like,
Oh
hey, we get to
man.
call the FBI on this one because the FBI doesn't even touch cases unless they're $1 million and up.
Okay.
We see breaches all the time, $200,000, $700,000, whatever. It's kind of the sweet spot for hackers because they know that law enforcement won't touch it. At least the people that actually know
Wow.
what to do about it. So for just everyday business people, one of the biggest things you need, it's called EDR, endpoint detection and response.
Okay.
And there's companies out there that will do this. There's Carbon Black, there's Sentinel One. You have to go through a provider to get these things. Because you can't just go off the shelf and buy them, especially if you're a small business. The minimum license count is like, I think it was 1,000, but now it might be 3,500 that you have to buy for to get in on these. And this is like
Wow.
the difference in the evolution of this industry is large businesses, corporations both have the financial budgets and because of that, the access to the right tools and devices. And with Reach Out going public, what I'm doing is trying to bring that big business security down to small business accessibility,
So
bridge that
good.
gap. Because
Yeah.
it doesn't exist unless you go through somebody, because even if it's a small provider, like a small IT provider, they don't even have access to the right tools, let alone the financials to actually afford those to provide those correct services. It's a crazy conundrum, but yet small businesses have to have these controls in place in order to get insurance coverage. Because right
Man.
now we're seeing underwriters deny them coverage because they don't have the right controls in place.
Okay.
It's kind of a
Are
weird
there,
time.
well, one, I mean, I've got 4 kids. My older boys are selling some things right now on OfferUp, and it's just my son is like all day fielding all of these scams essentially,
Yeah, yeah.
and like at every level, it's there, right? And are there things that we think are going to protect us that we just need to avoid and stay away from? Like, a couple years ago, I was like, my computer's acting really funny. And I didn't have somebody that I really trusted to take it to. And in desperation, I bought Norton antivirus. And I think I've
Yeah.
had more problems since then. And luckily, I found somebody who fixed things for me. But are there things like that that we should just avoid and stay away from and instead go to somebody like you?
Yeah, those big names, if we're talking consumers, right? Like just
Yeah.
home people, Norton Antivirus, McAfee, they don't do anything. There's actually different versions of those that are available to
Hmm.
large businesses. The,
Hmm.
the EDR that I was talking about is like next generation antivirus. Because
Okay.
the original Nortons and McAfees and Trend Micros, they went on fingerprint technology because
Wow.
every virus and everything used to look the same. So if it's on your computer, it's going to look the same on my computer if I get it. And every
Okay.
night they would download new definitions, which is like a database that says, look for these things because we know these viruses look like this.
Yeah.
And now from your computer to my computer, they look different. The
Wow.
fingerprint shifts and the behaviors are what you need to look at. And that's what EDR, endpoint detection, or we'll just call it next gen antivirus. It's actually a
Hmm.
form of artificial intelligence. It's behavioral analysis of these things. So if you open a PDF, right, like everybody does, maybe you're signing a new loan or something like that, and the things like makes an attempt to the document makes an attempt to there's something embedded in it that contacts an IP address in Russia. Okay. This will actually look at that behavior that it's doing and the actions that it's taking rather than trying to look for like, okay, it's going to look like this every single time.
Okay.
So then it figures out and it starts it can sandbox it, it can isolate it and then see what it's going to do next before it makes a final decision. And all this happens in milliseconds too, you know, because
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
yeah, it's super quick. It sounds like it takes this long time, but it doesn't. You know, I mean, we've used this and we've even tracked it in companies to where it hit one computer and then it'll go find another one, transfer itself, and then find another one. It would get caught within maybe, you know, 7 seconds, but it already made its way to 5 different computers. And that's because the AI was watching what it was doing in that moment. And then we have the opportunity to roll it back because we have all these other security layers that are in place. It's not just the one thing for business. It's actually 34 different layers that Reach Out provides right now. Just rolling it back is a different layer, watching it as one layer, making sure that we block as much at the edge as we can is another layer. But once it gets inside, we have things like the AI that go and hunt it after it's already in. So it's complex, but for home people, Norton McAfee, the only one I can say to go buy that is somewhat like what I'm talking about is WebRoot. And they're going to love me for saying this. You know, I don't get paid by them at all, but their tech, it is AI based. It's behavioral based. You can buy that at a Best Buy or a Staples or something like that. Stay away from the Nortons, the McAfees. They're coming along, but they're the big names, you know, and WebRoot's one that has been a little bit on the forefront of that, at least on the consumer side. And then just 2 other real quick tips for people: freeze your credit reports. Yeah, because you hear about these breaches, like there was another Marriott breach, you know,
When you get a breach, freeze your credit report.
No, do it now. Do it now.
Do it now.
We hear, we hear about these breaches, but that's the thing. We've had Marriott now a couple times. We have Microsoft, we've had T-Mobile, all of these things. So it's like, oh, your data's now leaked to the dark web. Well, it's like, it's been on there for years. Your social security number is already out there. Okay. It's just whether somebody picks it up and buys it now and actually decides to use it. That's the risk, right? It's like driving a car. It's like, what's the day that somebody's going to hit you? Because there's a bunch of other people. It's just that person decided to get in their car on that day when you're taking that route. It's the same thing. So the hacker decides to use your social security number that they've probably had for 2 years on this one specific day and see if they can get anything out of it now. If you're not seeking credit, freeze it. That means nobody can actually run your credit to open up a new account. And it's super simple. From an iPhone and Android, you go to one of the 3 bureaus and you can unlock it with a tap. You need to go buy a new car, a sofa to get furniture, whatever. It's just a tap and it's like, okay, go for it. Run it now. And then you can freeze it right after it's run. It's super simple.
This is huge. I had no idea. This is fantastic. I mean, I think the biggest thing that you just said that really hit me was, I mean, for so long, I've been trying to protect my information and not give my home address and not give out my phone number
it's all out there.
Not give out. And you said it is out there. And so it's important, I think, to acknowledge that. It's like when I talk to my kids, I know they're going to see porn on their phone. Like I know that it's going to pop up, even though we do everything that we can to protect them against that. And so I've taught them what to do when something like that happens. And it's the same here. Like your information is already out there in the world and it's going to, and what can we do to protect it now? I love that.
You got it.
I think
that's
an
a super
important
simple
distinction.
one.
Yeah, so good. Rick,
check it out. Go to truepeoplesearch.com and you and anybody listening. And enter your name in there and just the city you're in right now. And it's a public database aggregator. So you'll be able to see some of the stuff that's already out there about you. Addresses, phone numbers, all right. It'll freak you out.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I want to see that.
Yeah.
Okay. Fantastic. Rick, this has been really enlightening and I really appreciate everything that you have shared with us today. If you've got a couple minutes, I'd love to ask you a few rapid fire questions.
Hit me.
Okay. What's something you do consistently every day?
Every day, eat breakfast right when I get up, immediately.
Really?
Yeah. Before I work out, everything, the very first thing I do, I get out of bed within 5 minutes. I never lay in bed and I cook breakfast right away.
And what are you usually eating?
Same breakfast every morning, actually. It's 8 ounces of egg whites cooked in grass-fed butter, and then a light Thomasville English muffin because it's only like 20 grams of carbs. It has like 8 grams of fiber, and I put grass-fed butter on that too. Grass-fed butter is amazing. Vitamin K that's in there. I mean, just
Okay.
the saturated fats jumpstart your brain too. It's phenomenal. I don't do the bulletproof coffee thing because I like my coffee black. I just like taking the
Okay.
flavors. So I cook in butter and I put butter on my muffin
That's so cool.
every
Is
morning.
there a book is there a book that you keep on your nightstand, maybe something that you frequently revisit?
Not on my nightstand. All my books are always Audible. And so
That's
when
right.
I consume information, it's usually in chunks like articles. I used to say that I don't read, and I've had people, it's like, what are you talking about? You read all the time. You know so much. Something like, you're right. I do. I hear topic and then I'll go research it and put my own information together. Books are mostly motivational, not necessarily, I don't do really nonfiction books at all. I get all my
Okay.
nonfiction information from just trusted sources.
Okay. Awesome. Is there some advice you received in your life that's really helped you?
Get what you can while you still can get it,
Hmm.
which means that this was from a mentor of mine about 4 or 5 years ago. And it's really, it's like the premise of that statement is something is crossing your path right now for that reason.
Okay.
Tomorrow, it might not be there,
Mhm.
so get what you can while you still can get it is saying your opportunities right now, like literally right now. What are you going to do with it right now? So it is about being present.
Love that. Love that. Rick, what's working now?
What's working now? Oh, reevaluating. We talked about this a little bit, but being specifically intentional with my time on specific days of the week. And
Okay.
it's there's enough flexibility in there too, because I'm only, as we talked, one thing I didn't mention was actually like blocking off days for certain things, but I can still be fluid within that. Because if
Okay.
I get too boxed in, I start to get brain damage. Like I
Same.
can't, yeah, oh my gosh, I can't set a specific time for something specific on a day.
Mhm.
I can't
Okay.
do that. So if I've got like
Yeah.
the mornings on these days, I have these activities and I can do them whatever time I want to during this time. But it helps me being able to put like blocks of days or a half a day or a whole day towards something. And then like Friday,
Yeah.
even just saying Friday is really flexible and fluid. I'm going to do
Yeah.
whatever on Friday, work, personal, whatever I feel like on those days.
You found a sweet spot with that because it's got some structure to it, but it's not so rigid that you don't have the ability to be creative and flexible.
Yeah, I can't do rigid. No, no,
Yeah.
no.
Same. Same. So for everybody who wants to reach out to you, stay in contact and follow you, what are the best platforms that you're active on?
Instagram all the way at Mr. Rick Jordan. I'm really active on LinkedIn too, but to connect with me personally, you can DM me. I'm in my DMs personally all the time. Of course, I have a social media team, but I'm in there looking and responding
Yeah.
all the time.
Yeah. Awesome. Rick Jordan, this has been amazing. I really appreciate it.
Katie, you're incredible. I love your smile. I love your energy. You're awesome. Thanks for having me
Thank
on.
you. Yeah, you're welcome. And for everybody who's listening, this is What's Working Now.